never get tired of hearing that sound. Hey, what's up, guys? Soldier knows best here. So you know what it is already. I don't really need to do an introduction, but I'm reviewing this bad boy right here. Yes, the Xbox Series X. So there's been a ton of videos on this already. I already made a couple of videos, so I'm going to keep this review low key and chill for you guys. And I just want you, by the time you get to the end of this video, to kind of have my opinion on where this console sits in the landscape of gaming as a whole. So sit back, relax, let's jump right into it and see what this thing can do. Okay, so let me kick things off by talking about everything that Microsoft promised that this Series X can do, because they pretty much nailed it. And so this system can do 4K up to 120 frames per second, and it looks fantastic. It looks really good. And the system is also capable of doing, HDR video and handling ray tracing, Dolby Atmos, Dolby Vision, all of that good stuff. This system really is going to benefit from TVs that have HDMI 2.1 ports on them, because you can really get that full gambit of what this system can do. And Microsoft makes it really easy to go into the settings of the Series X, and you can go to this page that shows you all of the details about your video settings to let you know what settings that you actually have available to you depending on your setup. So yeah, if you do want to get the max experience with the Xbox Series X, more than likely you're going to need to buy a new TV that came out in the last year or so. But even if you don't do that and you have a 4K TV that you purchased recently, most people still will be able to do 4K at 60 frames per second, which is still going to be a nice bump up from the Xbox One. Now, unfortunately for this review period, I didn't have access to titles like Assassin's Creed and also the new Call of Duty that's coming out. And those titles are really going to be able to take advantage of the ray tracing techniques that you can get from this system and a lot of other technical upgrades. But I was able to have access to some of the Gears of War games like Gears of War 5, which as far as multiplayer can do 4K up to 120 frames per second, which is nice. And also to the Gears Tactics, which is coming over from the PC and making its debut on the Xbox. So that can run at 4K 60, and that looks excellent as well. And you're also going to be getting faster loading times. So because this system does have a SSD inside of it, that means that a game like Red Dead Redemption, which typically takes multiple minutes to load up, you can do that in almost half the time and sometimes even better. And this is going to be the case for games all across the board. So not only older games, but also newer games. And so on one hand, it's great that a lot of games are just going to look better running on this hardware, even though they're older games. But on the other hand, this does present an issue that we don't really see on the PC side. And that's the fact that even though we have the hardware with the Series X that can run 4K 120, you're going to notice some titles can do it, some titles can't do it. And this is going to be the case even for newer titles that come out that have been kind of optimized for the system, where on the PC, as long as you have the hardware, you can go into the settings and just bump all of that stuff all the way up to ultra and max and try to get the maximum frame rate, and you have that control, where you don't really have all of that control here on the Xbox Series X. And speaking of controlling, got it. Let's talk about the controller for this Xbox Series X. And so with this controller, Microsoft is taking the philosophy of, if it's not broke, don't fix it, but you can kind of clean it up a little bit. And that's what they did here. So some improvements from the Xbox One's controller is that the D-pad is kind of like filled in the gaps. So it's a lot easier to get all of those directions. And also there is a dedicated share button on this controller. So you can press it once to take a screenshot, and you can press and hold it to take a 4K video up to 120 frames per second. And then also from there, you can now share those clips from the console all over the internet, of course, to be able to share it with your friends and show them what you're doing. And then on the back, you will find that it does have a USB-C port instead of micro USB. And then also too, it still does have AA batteries here that it can take. So no built-in rechargeable battery, but of course you can just use some rechargeable batteries like I do. And then as far as the feel of the controller, it definitely feels like the same controller, but they have added some little micro bubbles or ridges or whatever you want to call it on the back of the controller, and also too on the triggers and the shoulder buttons, and this gives you just a better feel and better grip. And if you are getting really sweaty, it's going to be a lot easier to hold this controller. Now, even with these improvements, I'm still going to be using my Elite Series 2 controller for my gaming, just because you have more options, and this feels more next gen than this controller. And I get it, it does cost more, so I wasn't expecting this to come with the Xbox Series X, but I have been able to get my hands on the PlayStation 5 controller, and what Sony has done is really made this controller feel next gen. And so this controller is nice because you do have improved haptics inside of it, so the vibration rumble that you get from shooting a gun or walking across different materials is going to be a lot better. Then also it has that trackpad making a return. It does have adaptive triggers, which is great, and so it just feels more next gen than this controller here from the Xbox Series X. And again, it's a good basic controller, but I just wish Microsoft would have spent a little bit more time to make it more more unique, and that would have given developers a little bit more extra kind of playroom to really make their games really stand out. But now let's jump back into the software side of things real quick. And some good things with this Xbox Series X is that it has great backwards compatibility, and Microsoft has spent, I think, over 500,000 hours of people testing out all of the games from the Xbox 360, and the Xbox One games, besides the ones that need the Kinect to work, to make sure those games will work on this Xbox Series X. So that is a great thing, especially because the launch lineup for this new console doesn't have a ton of new games. So it's good to be able to still play that back catalog of games. And then also too, you do have smart delivery. So this means that if you do buy a game on the Xbox One, and then later on you upgrade to the Xbox Series S or the Xbox Series X, you can now get the better improved version of that game if the developer has made one for free. You don't have to buy that new version of the game all over again. And so this will be able to save you some moolah so you can spend it on something else, but this is not going to be available for every single game. Basically, the game developer has to choose whether or not they want to do this. Now, this next one might be my favorite software feature on the Series X, and this is called Quick Resume. And so this takes advantage of that 1 terabyte SSD inside of this console. So this means basically you can open up multiple games and then be able to switch between those games without having to load them all the way back up again. And so what I'm showing you right now is just me in real time going between Madden and multiple other games, and I can just switch between them as I go. And it takes a few seconds, but I'm able to get right back into whatever game that I'm switching to right away. And so I don't know the exact number of games that you can have open at once, but I think I had at the most maybe like 5 or 6 running at the same time, and it did a pretty good job. Now, I did come across one issue when I was recording this video where I went back into Madden and it made me restart all the way from the beginning. So there are still some hiccups here and there, but for the most part, I didn't experience those issues at all. And the way this all works is that basically when you close out a game, it saves that current state of the game on that SSD, and it's just kind of waiting there for you to jump right back into it. But the best part about Quick Resume is that you can literally turn the Xbox all the way off. You can unplug it, and then you can plug it back in. And once you turn it on, not only is that SSD makes for very fast startup and shutdown times, but also it will still allow you to jump right back into Quick Resume because everything is being stored on that SSD. So if you literally have like a power outage, it's a good chance that the Quick Resume will still work with your Xbox. So now you can get back gaming as fast as possible. And so SSDs are good, but that 1 terabyte of storage really is not that much when you think about it, because right now I'm already over 90% full and I have around like 22, 23 games installed, and some of the newer games like Assassin's Creed and also Watch Dogs on there as well. But I do have some options. So you can plug in an external hard drive via one of the USB 3.0 ports, and that will allow you to move over some of those games to that hard drive to free up some space, but you cannot play those games off of that hard drive. You have to move the games back over from the hard drive to the Xbox if you actually want to play them. But the other option is to get this bad boy right here. And this is a 1 terabyte Seagate expansion card. So this basically mimics what the built-in SSD can do. So not only can you put games on this to store them, but you can also play the games off of this. So this is definitely a good option, but this costs over $200. So it definitely is going to cost you a little bit of money. Oh, and you know what I just realized is that I haven't even talked about the box of the Xbox itself as far as the design. Well, first let me say I like Microsoft's kind of approach of not making it too flashy. Now look, the PS5 is, I think it does look good, but it definitely is going to stand out on your TV stand, where with this Xbox Series X, it does blend in really well. Now, when you look at it, you know what it is, but it doesn't really kind of take your attention away from anything else on your TV stand, which is a good thing. And you can stand it up vertically, which you will see mostly in this video, but you can also lay it down on one of its sides that has some little rubber feet on them. And then now that can kind of mostly fit in a lot of people's TV stands underneath the TV. But yeah, I think it looks pretty good. It has multiple USB 3.0 ports. I really do wish it did have USB-C on there. It's kind of confusing why it doesn't have that. And even though I am mostly digital and download everything, it still is good to have that optical drive so I can put in some Blu-rays from time to time. Oh, and at the top of the Xbox, you will find the main exhaust where you'll find most of the heat is going to be escaping out of. And don't worry, it does get a little hot, but nothing out of the ordinary. And it definitely doesn't get as hot or as loud as my gaming PC. So even at full load, when I'm playing something at 4K 120, the Xbox Series X did remain really quiet. So yeah, it looks good, it sounds good, and yeah, it performs good. And okay, so we're almost at the finish line here. Get it? The racing game on the TV finish line. Anyway, we're almost done here, but what are my final thoughts? Well, to keep it simply, I think that this Xbox Series X basically shortens or makes that gap between PC gaming and console gaming a lot smaller. Now, of course, in a few years, that gap is only going to get bigger and bigger because PC gaming can benefit from having better hardware and things being released more regularly, where with this Xbox Series X, it's basically what you see is what you get besides software updates. But for right now, I do find myself playing a lot of those PC games that I used to play on my gaming computer. I'm actually playing them a lot more sitting on my couch in front of this bigger TV with this Xbox, because I'm still getting, 4K 60 at least, and then also 4K 120 in certain titles. And I'm definitely happy with that for right now. And so look, I know some people right now are typing PC master race down in the comments. And yes, that is still true to a degree. But being able to have variable refresh rate and the higher refresh rates and better resolution is a good thing for everyone involved, because we're going to see developers be able to have more room to play around with and not have to worry about making the game and kind of be dumbed down for a console. Right now, the consoles can kind of stand up really well to the PCs. And even if you don't need 4K, you can still get a 1440p experience with the Xbox Series S. And that costs $300. So that's $200 off of that $500 price tag for the Xbox Series X. And yeah, you're missing the optical drive and some other things, but you still get that ray tracing. You still get the smart delivery. You still get the quick resume and those things like that. So you're not missing out on too much. So you have two different price tags here that can give you a really good experience. But at the end of the day, I'm happy with the Xbox Series X. I do want to see some better things with the controller, and maybe that comes with the Xbox Series XS. But for right now, I think it's good to go right now. I think Microsoft is in a good spot when it comes to hardware and software. But what do you think? Leave your comment down below and let me know what you think about this Xbox Series X. And also too, I will be getting my hands on the PS5, so make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you'll see when I upload those videos. But like always, I do want to thank you for watching this video, and I will catch you later. Peace.